Hey Chris, how's it going?
Hey, Sammy, I'm well. How about yourself?
Great, great. I mean, it's a big week, right?
Yeah, boy, and this is a week that's been a long time in coming. I know that the athletes and the community are really excited about these next 3 days for the CrossFit Games.
Sweet. I mean, we know 6 out of 12 events. Anything in particular that stands out for you as a subject matter expert?
I think today is really setting up these athletes for Saturday and Sunday. Today is riddled with challenges. In particular, I look at the last event. They're announcing a trail run, but they haven't provided any specifics regarding this trail run. But that is the fifth event for the first day of the CrossFit Games. And that, to me, is going to be a true test. Typically in the past, those trail runs have been filled with challenges. There's flat sections which force athletes to run fast, but then there's ups and downs and twists and turns and uneven terrain. Essentially, the trail runs historically have been extremely demanding. And for that to come on the fifth and final event for today, I think that it's going to be a true test today, and it's going to set people up for the ones who have actually paid their dues and done their homework.
Okay. Interesting.
Yep. And so, like, for me, when I look at the events, that one stands out, that trail run, but we don't know the particulars. And I find that also interesting. I know that Dave Castro puts a lot of effort into his programming. I know that he wants it to be a good test. One of the things that I think about on this trail run is that he has no real idea the level of fatigue that these athletes are going to experience by the time they get to the start of the trail run. And so part of it is maybe he's doing an evaluation. Does he want to provide a stimulus that challenges them, or does he want to destroy them? And that's the thing, is that any programmer can write something that could destroy an athlete. But if he's trying to make a test, then what he needs to do is evaluate who is going to win that trail run for the men and who's going to win it for the women, and what stimulus do they need. Because if I was going to program for these 5 athletes, I would just be looking at the fastest person and programming around the fastest person. And then the rest of them, you know what? You need to do more work. You need to come back next year and be better. You need to be sharper. You need to be more on your game.
Okay. Wow. I mean, when we look at event number 2 in particular, the core and sack sprint, let me pull that up here for us.
This is a good event, mainly because several of the athletes have done something similar. In 2016, they had an event that ran up the same hill. And so there is some advantage for the athletes that competed in 2016. In particular, Brooke Wells finished second in this event, and Matt Frazier also finished second. And they do have, without a doubt, an advantage. But this year in 2020, they have spiced it up significantly. And I've really I like the way in which they have created this, because you may think that 2016 you can draw some comparisons. But the truth is it's apples and oranges. Just because you ran up a hill in 2016, this hill, although it's the same, the workout is completely different.
Okay. Any athlete that you've worked with or that you observed that stands out in this particular workout for you, besides those 2 that competed in 2016?
I think that Matt Frazier, he really stands a chance to do well. One of the things that he did play second in 2016, but remember in 2016, they had to do wall ball shots and they had to do the weighted GHD sit-ups. So they were doing the men with their 30-pound med ball. They were doing their GHD sit-ups, and then they had to carry up the hill their 30-pound med ball. And women back then had a 20-pound med ball. So part of it is that these athletes were only running about half of the distance that they're going to be doing today. The athlete that really shined, though, back in 2016 was Matt Frazier. He finished just behind Brett Fikowski, but the truth is that Fikowski was faster on the wall ball shots and sustained and maintained his lead through the entire event. But Frazier was gaining. Frazier was gaining on the 160, 165 meter hill sprint carry portion of that event. Frazier's got an advantage here. You know, they bump up the weight. They go from 30 pounds. Now it's a sandbag at 50 pounds. And Frazier, one of the things that we know about him is that he's got a very good uphill cadence, meaning the way his stride rate, the number of steps that he takes is fast. He works on how many steps can he take. So we all know that speed in the movement of running is based upon, obviously, it's the amount of force that your foot makes contact with the ground, but it's the stride length and it's the number of steps that you take. You've got to have that versatility because you know what? Running uphill with 50 pounds, your length is gone. So now how are you going to make up time? How are you going to run fast? And stride frequency, the number of steps you take per minute is going to be one of the keys. And Frazier, that's his jam. He knows how to turn his legs over quickly. So he's got an advantage. On the women's side, you know, in 2016, Tia was here, Katrin was here, Carrie Pierce, and part of it was Brooke Wells. Brooke Wells dominated. Thing is in Brooke Wells's case, she wasn't in the final heat when she competed. And so she had to go in basically blind with no indication of how fast to move in this workout. And she crushed it. So now if it's head to head and if it's all 5 women going at the same time, I expect Brooke Wells, because of just her ability to generate power, is going to shine. She's going to be good here. But let's not count the other women out. The other women in this event, they have proven themselves as really capable and competent runners. Tia, Katrin, and Haley Adams.
Yeah, and I mean, Haley in particular, you know very, very well. So what do you think, which of her many talents, you know, prepares her for this particular event?
So this event, the Cornsack Sprint, it is completely different type of running than running on flat ground or even the trail. Haley is going to shine in that final event. She has done a tremendous amount of volume under the tutelage of Rich Froning. And the fact is that she's not going to be fatigued by the time she gets to that 5th and final event. That's where she's really going to shine. There is a major difference, though, with hill sprints. So in my case, you know, one of the things back in the day when training with, you know, Garrett Fisher and Neil Maddox and Jason Kalipa is that these were powerful guys. And when we would go into the hills and run, they would destroy me. But when we got onto the track, where my efficiencies really took, you know, a hold of the workout, I would destroy them. And the thing is that they can generate power. What you must do in this uphill sprint is generate power. You must have strength. And the question is that does Haley have the strength to hang on to the time domain of this workout? And that's the tricky part. The time domain of this workout is going to be difficult. It does, in my opinion, it does not give the speed, strength, power athlete a massive advantage because of the time domain. I expect the finishing times to be between 2.5 to 3 minutes. I think that the women's finishing time might be faster than the men's finishing time because of the load that they have to lift. But the key here is that it's the amount of time. If you're finishing somewhere around 2 minutes and 45 seconds, maybe 3 minutes for this event, this is similar to how you would attack an 800-meter event in track and field. You're going to have to go out fast. You're going to have to. And then what your job is when that lactic acid builds up in the muscles and now it floods your bloodstream and your whole body is surging with pain, your ability to not quit will be the key. That will be the key. The problem is if you go out too fast, the price you will pay on the back end is going to be significant. And that's the beauty of this event, is that it is going to punish the athlete that goes out just a little bit too hot. And the beauty is here is it sets those athletes up perfectly, because the way this event starts is it starts out flat. The first 1/3 of it only climbs a total of about 7 meters up, 6 to 7 meters of incline.
That's interesting. We found, before we started the show, we found a little analysis on the CrossFit.com site. So let me just pull that up so you can give your expert opinion on this. All right, let's play. I'll play the video and you just walk us through.
So they're starting on the flat deck, and they basically are going to have to run about 40 meters across this flat deck. And they're going to hit this incline. And this incline, it's not that great. It's probably, 6 meters up. It's a total of maybe 15, 20 meters in length. And then they get to another flat section of long road, of open space. Now, the end of this open space, that's when they start their climb. When they start this climb, they're almost 1/3 of the way through the event. Remember, this total event is 320 meters. Now, this is where the challenge starts. From this point on, the next about 1/3, so let's call it 107 meters, climbs at an incredible incline. So one of the things that we always benchmark in workouts is the degree of incline. And so in this event, the average incline from start to finish is a 20% grade. So that's a substantial grade. But the bulk of that grade comes in the middle portion. So that middle portion where they're running right now, there are sections where it's 35% grade. And so the thing is that you have to have a sound strategy. You're not going to run with women 30 pounds and men with 50 pounds up a 35% grade. So you have to strategize on that. The fastest way to go is a fast turnover and walk. You've got to walk. And that's what we see here. They're really hitting the toughest portion of this. Now, I mentioned in 2016, they were on the exact same trail in 2016, but they ran half of the total distance. And part of it is in 2016, their average grade was only about 17%. And these athletes back then, the run portion was taking them Frazier did his run in about 1 minute and 17 seconds. Annie Thorstadter won this event. And Annie, her finishing time was about 1:22, 1:23 for the 2016 carry. So they were moving extremely fast. That's why when we look at this event, we've got to look at the total distance that they're going, as well as the grade adjustments. They're getting very close right here that you see on the screen to the finishing spot in 2016, which was right there. That's where about they finished. And so they were able to cover from their event at the start of their run to that spot in about a minute and 15 or so seconds. Now, after this point, you're going to finish up about 215 meters up. It starts to level off a little bit more. The grade isn't nearly as significant. As a matter of fact, I took a little note on it, and the grade drops to about 17% for the remaining 107 meters. Okay. Now, the problem is that the footing gets bad. It's not on a trail anymore. So part of it is that you're almost bushwhacking and moving through, but you're still doing a light jog at best. Here's coming out the top, and you can see the finishing time. So part of it is that I would look at a couple of things in this event if I'm doing some calculations. The first thing is that I would look at is the distance change. So in the past, you know what, it was half the volume. All right, so we've got an increase in distance. If I look at that, and we all know that we slow down when we move into longer time domains. So there's no way that we're going to maintain the same pace that we did in 2016. We're going to slow down based upon this doubling of the distance somewhere around 15%. So we've got that adder. We also got the weight increase. So when you increase the weight, for women, it goes up 10 pounds, and for men, it goes up 20 pounds. That 20-pound differential, it's going to have an impact, but not as much as people think. So one of the things that we know is that when we run, we obviously, we have to carry the weight, the load. Well, when we put on a ruck or we carry a sandbag, that additional weight is the same thing as carrying body weight, and it does slow us down. So the increase in 20 pounds, that would slow you down by about 2 minutes per mile. So per mile, but we're only going a fifth of a mile. So the total amount of time that that additional weight is adding to us is not a huge number. It's not a big amount. The other thing is we have an elevation change. So back in 2016, our elevation change was somewhere around 27 meters or 90 feet up. We're now going 206 feet or 63 meters increase in elevation. That's going to present a problem. That's going to make it very challenging for these athletes because it's going to be a continuous amount of power requirement to manage that increase in elevation. And so when I look at these three things, the elevation, we got the increase in weight, and then we've got the increase in distance, you know, that's the part we have a triple witching hour. And that's going to be the difficulty for these athletes, is that there are three variables and all three of them can cause them some trouble. So the key is going to be on this, who is going to be in the least amount of discomfort 2/3 of the way through? Because I think that's where this event's going to truly start, at 2/3 of the way through. Where is the courage of the person that's willing to turn themselves inside out? Who's the one that can maintain their velocity under that increasing amount of lactic acid? Because remember, that lactic acid is going to be increasing. And as it does, it's going to start shutting down your motor units. Essentially, you're going to be going from 100% muscular capacity to 99 to 98 to 97. And that lactic acid is going to prevent those muscles from functioning. So the person with the greatest level of fight, the person who wants it the most, the person who does not quit, that makes their muscles function under that increasing fatigue, is the one that's going to make that move in that final third. Because that, right in that point, that's where doubt is going to creep in on athletes. They're going to start thinking about the balance of the day. They're going to start thinking about the other events that follow. In particular, like we were talking about, that trail run. That trail run is going to be sitting in the back of their mind, and they're going to be thinking, do I want to blow my legs out now, or do I want to save it for that last event? And that's where an athlete can, they can snap what we call this elastic cord. So a lot of these athletes are very aware of that. There is an imaginary cord between yourself and the athlete in front of you. And so long as you can maintain about a 2-meter distance from that athlete in front of you, you're all right. It's almost like they're pulling you. But as soon as they pull further away than that, that elastic cord, it's going to snap, and that person is gone, and they will never come back ever again, because they're thinking about what's coming next, not what's now occurring. They're going to be in a defensive role versus an offensive role. And that's the strategy, is that if you have the courage to make a move and snap that elastic cord, I think that's where someone's going to actually surprise the community. And that's where something can happen that's unique. And that's what makes this event special, is that as much as we think on paper, you know, Brooke Wells is going to shine, Tia will do well, Frazier will do well. The fact is that if someone does something extraordinary, if someone makes a move that the other person sits and says, wow, that, and catches them by surprise, it's over, because there's not enough time to fix that kind of a mistake.
Okay. I mean, once those athletes finish this event, I mean, you're an expert on recovery as well. So what would your advice be in order to recover from this kind of a workout as fast as they can? Because they never know when the next workout will start.
That's right. And so that's going to be one of the keys is how are they going to be putting themselves in the best possible position for the next event? And that's the thing, is that you have to just now think about this next event. The truth is that they're sitting up there on the top of the hill, and in years past, they've never brought the athletes back down. So all of these athletes are going to have to now walk back down the hill, which I would encourage. I would encourage them to rest at the top of this hill for about 90 seconds. Let's face it, when they finish this 320-meter uphill effort, it is going to be a level of fatigue that they haven't experienced in a long amount of time. This is going to hurt. And so their heart rate is going to be at their max. We got to get that heart rate down. The number one thing that you must do to recover is to get the heart rate down. We've got to get the heart rate down to where our breathing is under control. So I talk a lot about breathing. Breathing is really the tell. We all know that when we hyperventilate, that's a sign that our demand for oxygen, our muscles are demanding more oxygen that we can bring in. And so we hyperventilate. And our heart's reaction to the muscle's demand for oxygen, what it does is it increases the heart rate to push that oxygen-rich blood to the muscles that are needing it. And so breathing and your heart rate go hand in hand. The way that you monitor your heart rate is breath. So once you're at the top, you want to get your heart rate down. You want to get your breathing under control. That will happen for all these athletes in 90 seconds. So my recommendation is, if you need to sit down, but get the heart rate under control, get the breathing under control, and that's going to take about 90 seconds. After 90 seconds, I'd start moving, and I'd start walking down that hill. What I want to do is I want to have my muscles moving, because again, we can lay on the ground for about an hour and all of that lactic acid will get consumed. And so from a lactate standpoint, we can clear that by laying on the ground in an hour. But again, we have to compress our schedule, our recovery time, because we got another event coming up and we have to be prepared. So what we want to do is an active recovery. We want them to start walking immediately down that hill while their heart rate is still relatively high. Now, this is important because as they're walking, that's not a high intensity effort. So what we're using is slow twitch fibers. These slow twitch fibers, what they're doing is, in order to get the energy to contract, they're actually pulling that lactate out of the bloodstream. And when they do, it pulls the fatigue causing properties, the acidity, those byproducts with it. And these slow twitch fibers, what it will do is consume this lactate as a fuel, right, to make the muscles move, but it takes the fatigue causing properties out. And so that's why, you know, endurance athletes, what we talk about is their ability to recover. Endurance athletes have an incredible ability to clear lactic acid, to clear fatigue, to recover. And these athletes, what they need to do is they need to reduce the total amount of time that it takes to clear their accumulated lactate. And the best way to do it is, while their heart rate is still relatively high, start moving. As soon as the heart rate drops too low, now the blood is no longer circulating. And so what we want to do is we want to keep the heart rate relatively high. For me, I'd like it between, for them, you know, 180 minus their age would be on the low point of a heart rate. And on the high end, I'd like it really close to their lactate threshold. The closer it is to their lactate threshold, the faster that lactic acid, that fatigue, can burn off and clear out of the body. Now, a great protocol, if these athletes have been doing it in their training, they can clear this accumulation of lactic acid, not in an hour, but they can get it down under 20 minutes. And that is a dramatic advantage for the next events coming up.
Okay, so practically speaking, how does that look like? Do they go into a slow jog, or what kind of movement are they doing in order to reach that specific heart rate?
Yeah, so here's the problem is that they're not going to be able to run, and they're not going to want to run. So what we want to do is have them walk down the hill, and that's going to take them a chunk of time. But then they need to, and ideally, they're hopping on a Concept 2 bike. And what they're doing is that they're maintaining the same movement pattern that they just ran in, but they're doing it on the bike. And so there's less pounding. So remember, we're trying to look at a specific stimulus to clear this fatigue. Yeah, if you could, running would be without a doubt the best option, because, obviously active recovery is the purpose is to use the same muscle groups and movement patterns. So if you created fatigue in the movement of running, then you want to clear it in the movement of running. That would be the best. The problem is that the ligaments, the tendons, the bones, the structure has already took a beating. So you know what? The next best option is hop on a bike where your body weight is supported by the object. And so long as your movement pattern and your heart rate is high enough, those muscles that used to climb the hill, what they'll be doing is they'll be actually consuming, again, that lactate and removing those fatigue-causing byproducts with it. And I think that's an incredible stimulus. But you've got to do this in training. If you haven't done it in training, all that Concept 2 bike active recovery will do, it will just create more fatigue.
Yeah, I mean, you expect athletes of that caliber to be prepared for that. I mean, the guys that have been working with you obviously are. I mean, thank you for this really, really deep analysis, and I think that you really gave those athletes kind of a cheat sheet. So you might want to send it to Haley beforehand. But you
that's the strategy. You really do need to have a plan. And part of it is that this sport has evolved, and you're kidding yourself if you think that you can just show up and make it happen. That's not an option anymore. You have to be strategic. You have to be aware of what am I encountering. And so the fact is that if you know that it's 40 meters across that open flat top deck, and then you've got to go up that 15-meter rise, and then what you're going to do is you've got that long run across that field, that flat section, until you finish the first third of the event. You have to look at this in terms of blocks. And if I look at this event, the very first thing that you do is you have to look at the estimated amount of time, and this is going to be under 3 minutes. That tells me that if it's under 3 minutes, I have to have a much more aggressive approach. I'm not pacing it. And that's the thing, is that if you didn't know where that finish line was, then how are you going to come up with a sound strategy? Because remember, as you are going up this hill, the brain is thinking, how much pain am I in, and how much distance do I have to go? Well, what if you don't know the finish line? The brain is going to sit there and go, you know what? I don't have enough information. And because of that, I am going to actually create phantom fatigue. And now, what's going to happen is I'm going to force this athlete to slow down, because I don't know if I have enough energy to get to wherever that finish line is. So the athlete that has the most information, the most knowledge, and the soundest game plan is the one that's going to actually finish with the highest level of confidence. All of these athletes, with these athletes, you know what we don't want? Surprise. As soon as we get them to a level of surprise, now they recognize, and what they interpret surprise as, I'm not prepared. And now they'll auger into the earth. And that spiral, that's what we do not want. Because you know what? By the third event, we're not even touching the total of the weekend. There are a lot of events over a 3-day period of time. But you know what? This one, they can actually create some doubt. And instead of coming in optimistic, they're now coming in pessimistic. And now that lighting the fuse for the beginning of the end. You have to have a plan.
All right. Cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We're all watching this weekend and looking forward to talk to you about upcoming events. Thank you.
Look forward to it. Thanks, Sammy. We'll see you.
Bye-bye. Bye.